Good afternoon. I'm John Latman, and welcome to Simply Awake, recording here in eastern Pennsylvania in the little town of Hollycong at my office. So I want to read a piece to you today that I've just written on Substack because I really liked it, and it's going along with the theme of the last few days on these pages at Simply Awake LLC on YouTube. So here's the article. It's called You Choose. Stay asleep in the cult, Zombieland matrix of your thoughts, or wake up to reality. Your senses are your guide to a rich, present moment life. Most thought is nonsense, not based in senses. And right now there are many trying to brainwash you into repeating their words and making you believe that their thoughts are true. As you may or may not know, I'm a survivor of 7 years in a religious brainwashing cult, which I lived in after I graduated from a Christian college. I've had to go deep into thought and the nature of thought to undo the damage done to me in the cult. In the process of undoing the damage they did to my ability to think critically, I realized that no one teaches us to think critically or wants us to think critically, at least until we reach college age, or if we don't go to college, we reach the age of maturity and start working. The public education system was set up by industrialists and Gilded Age millionaire types who would be billionaires now, who wanted compliant workers for their factories and their offices, who could understand instructions but not challenge them. They wanted what we now sometimes call sheeple, educated enough to read instructions, but not educated enough to challenge authorities or worldviews or religious dogmas. We grew up listening to preachers, teachers, rabbis, priests, and other authority figures, including politicians and news media broadcasters, who tell us that we should hear what they say, memorize it, and then speak it back to them. If we do it right, we get an A and membership in the group that uses that kind of language. Sorry to say, folks, but this is all cult-like or brainwashing behavior that rewards you with membership for using our language and not straying from that language, heaven forbid. This isn't learning how to think for ourselves. This is learning how to kowtow, right? Or pay homage to, or put someone on a pedestal, the teacher or the leader or the media pundit who's in front of us. This is not too far removed from brainwashing cult behavior, except that more people fall for it, so no one thinks it's a cult. In cases of large groups, it becomes acceptable brainwashing. If you and I both read the New York Times and don't question it, or we listen to Fox News and don't question it, you and I can both feel like we're part of the same group, but by the way, enemies of the other one. We're both in the know in our own group and its echo chamber of repeatedly hearing and believing the same set of words. This believing the authorities without question starts when we're very young, 4 or 5 years old. Or if you've gone to preschool, then even earlier. We're not ever taught to question what they say because that would unravel the whole nature of knowledge and theory, which is that it is inherently subjective. All thought is nonsense because it is one step removed from the experience of our senses. So it is non-sense. And at least one partial second removed, a thought is at least one partial second removed from the time when the actual experience occurs. In other words, no thought is reality. And yeah, I know, I'm using thoughts to challenge and erase thoughts. Terribly paradoxical, but that's how the process of clarifying reality actually starts. Even the most advanced scientific understandings are working theories or hypotheses, e.g. they're subjective. They're not staunchly objective truths, though some take them as absolute truths. They're particularly defended as absolute truths by people who get a paycheck for defending them. And, you dare to challenge them and your career can be ruined. This has happened to a number of people in a number of sciences. Remember the scientists who told us that cigarettes were healthy to smoke? Now, you're probably too old to remember that, but I do remember it in the 50s and 60s. Or the ones that told us that the untested COVID-19 vaccines would prevent us from getting COVID. I've watched a series of media clips recently of officials guaranteeing us that we wouldn't get COVID if we took the experimental vaccines. Ha! I got COVID after my vaccines. Yes, they really said that, then changed their tunes. In both cases, cigarettes and COVID vaccines. But we're supposed to believe what they say because they're the experts or the scientists. So, science, just like any other sphere of human thought, can be a basis for brainwashing. You must believe what I say because I'm the leading scientist in the field of whatever, right? We've been judiciously divided from one another politically by news media, and politicians also bent on using words to gain power. This is another form of brainwashing. Sorry, it's how I see it. I really do. Do you like being lumped into a category of people called conservative or progressive when your complex views on things don't fit into any of those rigid and simplistic categories? I certainly don't. But maybe you like the feeling that you have other company around you, which is one reason why we toe the party line and speak the group speak and use the cult language or the political ideologue language or the scientific language or whatever language we're using. We want to belong, so we have to use the same vocabulary. However, you've noticed the more divided we are from one another and the less we talk to each other about our real concerns, and the more we look at others as the enemy, the worse off we are and the more brainwashed we are. This is just what they did to me in the brainwashing cult and everyone else who was a member of it. Eventually, no other Christian was even going to heaven but us, and everyone was an enemy to be kept at a distance, including our co-workers and our family members. Does that sound familiar in the age of debate about Trump versus Biden? Yeah, scarily so, I'd say. And who gains from our minds being controlled? Those trying to control them. Governments, politicians, religious leaders, corporations, the news media and their advertisers, anyone trying to manipulate us into supporting them with our money, our words, our lives, and reluctantly, I'll have to say too, our bodies, because there's sexual abuse coming out of this manipulation too. When we get older, or if we begin to challenge accepted theories at a younger age, political points of view, challenging news stories, and etc., our minds can get sharp at discerning what's really, albeit subjectively, true, and what is false. This is a great start in deconstructing brainwashing mythologies and finding our common humanity with other people. It's also useful in moving any of us who are interested towards enlightenment or liberation. Finally, though, the greatest deconstruction is to take away the language that mediates reality and just experience the stark nature of being here without words. We did some of this on yesterday's recording. Because even spirituality and religion are mostly just a lot of words, blah, 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 about a reality that can't be confined by words. We're trying to take the ocean of being and put it in a glass of water that's composed of words like God or enlightenment or liberation or no self or consciousness. The words might be useful pointers, but they're not the condition itself. If you remain in the realm of words, you're likely also remaining in the world of brainwashing. Who originated those thoughts that are repeating in your mind? Are they really yours? Have you ever checked? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself whether that so-called authority is, whether what they're saying is true or not? If you haven't, there's no blame in that. I'm not calling you immoral or an idiot. You were trained to live like that from the very earliest days of your schooling. However, it's high time to stop believing the party line or the doctrine or the spiritual guru and look at what's true and false for yourself. If you have the same access to enlightenment, well, no, wait, not if you have. You do have the same access to enlightenment or awakening or liberation, or whatever you want to call it, that your gurus do. They have nothing that you don't already have. They've just uncovered it. They are no better than you are. If you're going to wake up out of the dream or the matrix or Zombieland, or the morass of untruths that pass for the so-called reality that we consent to, consensual reality, you'll have to have the courage to not know. Oh, what about that? I don't know. That's the answer when you really don't know. You'll also need the courage to leave behind a lot of or all the groups and political parties and religions and spiritualities that claim that they know and you don't. So follow them and repeat their words, and then life will be peachy keen. You'll need to deconstruct all the truths, even the spiritual ones, if you want liberation or enlightenment, until you just come down to what might be called raw experience. This, then, is what liberation or enlightenment finally looks like. It can't be described in words. Sensory experience is the raw data of life and liberation. All else is words, layers of sound, attempting to spin a simulacrum of that life and liberation. Remember, though, the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. Saying goodbye here from Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm John Labman, about 3:15 on Wednesday afternoon, the 29th of January. Have a great evening.